Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tales from the Insol Crypt. Your podcast host from Power Capital are Alon Jacobson and myself, Stella Millis. We have invited a few of the most talented and up-and-coming insolvency lawyers to share some of their stories and insights. And with us today is Monique Sassi, Cassels rising star, who will share some of her unique and fresh insights in the restructuring world and challenges that she has faced. Monique, very pleased to have you today. Welcome. Alain, I'll let you take it away.
Monique, thanks for joining us.
No problem.
So Monique, you seem like a real decent human being. I know we just met a few minutes ago, but how does someone as decent and as you land up in the insolvency world?
The ugly insolvency world. I guess it's two questions right? Like the first is how I first just decided to become a lawyer, and I think the answer to that is I grew up in South Africa. I
couldn't tell at all.
No idea. I grew up in South Africa, and unfortunately I was a victim of crime at a really young age, and I think I just grew up with the sense that there was a lack of law and order. And so I think there was a part of me that, was attracted to becoming a lawyer for those sorts of reasons. Fast forward a few years, not too many, I came out of law school and here in Canada, and I joined the financial services group at Cassels, and I found myself in a pretty unique situation, right? There was this really dynamic group of partners in the restructuring group who needed a junior, and so to that extent I fell into it. So on one hand I fell into it, but on the other hand, if I really think back on it, it's a perfect mix of solicitor side work and litigation work, which is something I really enjoy doing both of. So I feel like restructuring brings them both together, and so maybe it happened more by purpose.
So, before we pressed record, you said, your unique story is being a young mother, a young partner, female in the industry. How do you think those attributes play a role in, in your effectiveness or some hurdles that you may have to face in the industry?
So look, I think for a lot of females that are in just generally the legal field, and especially in restructuring, it's a similar story. It's a lot of juggling, right? Like any woman who's working and trying to have a career and be an involved parent, it's a lot of juggling, but there's a lot of flexibility too. I think I'm very lucky. I've always worked with incredible partners, and I have fantastic female role models in my group, but also the male role models in my group are very family orientated fathers, right? So they've always been incredibly supportive. I like telling one of the stories of when I was a young associate. I'd just come back from my first maternity leave, and one of the partners, Shane Kukowitz, was trying to schedule a conference call, and he sort of put it on hold and turned around to me and said, what time's bath time? And then we sort of scheduled the call after bath time at 6 o'clock. And I remember just feeling at the time that was such an amazing thing for me, who had just come back from maternity leave, and you want to be doing meaningful work, you want to be being good at your job, but you also want to still be a parent and be there for your children. So I've never had a situation where I feel like I've been negatively impacted when people find out I have a family and I have other commitments. And it's taught me to juggle, right? Like it's taught me to prioritize. It's taught me that you often can just shoot off an email and say, I will get to that. And you get to that when the kids go to bed at night, right? So.
And what about the female aspect? I want to just, you're the first female lawyer that we've had on this particular podcast. I could tell you from my experience, Stella has us wrapped around her finger. So I think it's been an advantage for her. But does that play a role when you're in the weeds and you're in the middle of a fight? Like, do you find it plays a role, or is it just kind of being a good lawyer and that's about it?
You know what? I don't find it plays a role. I think what plays a role is being smart and capable, right? And I find that if you are smart and good at what you do, I don't ever feel like because I'm a woman, they take me less seriously. there are obviously established relationships, especially with more senior practitioners in the insolvency bar who have been working together for years and years. And sometimes it's harder on that front to break into that, right? So, but I have that now with my generation of colleagues, right? So yeah. Sometimes that's a little bit of a barrier, but I've never honestly and thankfully never found that as a woman I've had to say things differently, or I think you need to be a firm, intelligent advocate either way. And
well, I think it's a great testament to the space in general in the insolvency world.
Yeah.
And I echo that, Monique.
So let's switch gears from the mother and the female. Let's just talk about some of the challenges working in this field. What are some of the obstacles that you find are unique to the insolvency world in general?
So the first thing that comes to mind is I think the biggest hurdle I think a lot of us in the field, in the industry really understand is this bankruptcy stigma, right? So that is so many business people that are not in our world just feel like the word bankruptcy or restructuring insolvency is they've failed, their business has failed, they're bankrupt in inverted commas. And so you're often up against that. And for anyone that's in our world, we know that's just not the case, right? Like a lot of companies, we have lots of creative tools that can help companies, but it's really the sooner you get us involved, the better and the more options we have. And so it's about trying to convince people to be open to our options and our suggestions. The flip side is it's very rewarding when you're able to convince them to come to the fore and you go through a proceeding and they come out the other end. There's a huge sense of reward when you're able to have helped them, right? So I think that's the biggest issue. I don't think anybody who practices in this would be surprised by that. I think it's a pretty tough thing to work with, but also fun. It's also part of the challenge. I don't know. The other hard thing is just sometimes you're just dealing with some difficult people on the other end that are, for me, what's really challenging is when there's a level of unethicalness or they're just tough to deal with. But again, I take that more, it doesn't happen often, but I take it as a challenge. I take it as a way to, bring them around to the right, correct way to do things and to convince them sometimes that it's their idea.
Well, you went into law, so that was your fault.
What?
I said you went into law. It is what it is, right?
Sure.
So on that note, let's get a fun story. What's the most memorable case you worked on? Why was it memorable? How did it change your career?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so the first one that comes to mind is I was probably a couple months in as a first-year associate, and I landed in the Nortel case. And so for anybody who's been involved in restructuring knows about Nortel, has some story about Nortel. So I landed up, it was the huge multiple week-long cross-border trial between the US and Canada. And so we had our US counterparts from New York effectively move into our offices for this duration of the trial and prepping and the nighttime, and the technology and the things like that. It was pretty phenomenal. Like looking back on it now, at the time I was just so deer in headlights and just trying to soak it all in. And really, like looking back now, I think it was very pivotal in my career. It gave me my first taste of foundational cross-border insolvency issues, and then gave me experience I wasn't even aware I was getting in terms of cross-border insolvency legal issues. And it paved the way for other than cross-border files like Payless, Toys R Us, things like that. And now looking back, I mean, anybody who's done it, there are very few Nortel type files in a career, and I was just very, very lucky that was one of my first experiences, watching some of the best advocates in New York and in Canada battle it out. It was pretty phenomenal.
How has technology changed your day-to-day world? And if you think about especially now during COVID and how we're all utilizing technology in unique ways. Have you seen technology change things over the last few years?
You know what? Yes, I think from when I started, when you start as a young associate, you're so on the cusp of all the new technology. You're newly trained on it. You're really good to go. But I still think back, we still used to do like closings with hardcore signature, like hard signatures, not electronic, and that's just all changed. On the court side, obviously COVID has really nudged everybody along in terms of electronic and technology. I think things like Zoom and Sync and Caseline and all those sorts of new technologies that are going to really transform the way the court proceedings work in terms of filing materials. And I remember compiling motion records when I started, like physically compiling them with tabs and printing it out and reprinting. You just don't do that anymore, right? You do it all electronically, you review it online, and even more so now with COVID. So I think, and just from my perspective, obviously that technology has made working more flexible, right? And made it more doable from home, from wherever.
Any downsides you see with the technology, Monique, as we're moving forward? Like, is it?
Yeah, like at the FaceTime, right? I miss the going to court and you used to see everybody, and unfortunately you'd wait a while to be heard, but you'd be able to negotiate things. I think a lot of the time that's when a lot of the deal making used to be done, but also connecting with your peers and hearing what people are working on and getting a sense of that. It just feels different on Zoom.
I mean, Monique, let's call a spade a spade. You just miss wearing the robes, right?
Those robes. Oh my goodness. No, I don't miss those robes. I mean, they were easy. The irony is now we could put robes on over our pajamas and nobody would know, right? But when you
I'm not wearing pants right now, just no one knows.
Too much information.
By the way, we're leaving that one in.
You can't edit that out. When you used to have to put like a suit within robes is hard, but there's something about wearing a robe. I know it sounds so cliche, but you sort of put it on and you there is a sense of purpose and professionalism. It's the same as when you put on a suit, right? Like, don't you feel a little different?
You're speaking to the wrong person. I don't even own a suit. I live in t-shirts.
I like that traditionalism. I think that there's, it's a really important piece, I think, to keep. But yeah, I'm enjoying not robing up.
Very cool. So, I mean, for those people that are listening to this that are looking at the insolvency world as a career path, what kind of advice do you have for them?
So for those that are already starting out in the insolvency world, I think my biggest piece of advice would be just, it takes time. It really takes time to learn, especially the laws and the legal side. It just takes time to feel like you are getting it all. I remember those first few years just feeling very like overwhelmed. It's a steep learning curve, but just stick it out, because it does get better, and all of a sudden you turn around and you know things and you're able to help people independently. I quote, I've got it written down here. I quote one of my favorite Peloton instructors, Robin Arzen, and I love this quote, is
she is very good.
I love her. Embrace failure and appreciate the wins along the way. So take it in chunks. You're not going to be able to, I think maybe I thought, oh, you want to like hit the ground running. It just takes a long time to get there, but it's worth it in the end.
That's great. Well, I have no other questions. Stella, do you have anything else?
No, that was great. Thanks,
well,
Monique.
Monique, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.